All right, let's go and see what's going on online. Good old
Oh, by the
wrestling.
way, Jim Cornette,
Oh
our
yes.
good friend and fellow comrade, Jim Cornette. Go ahead if you want to do.
No, go
But
ahead.
Jim
Go ahead.
Cornette, he criticized people for the disrespect for the Double or Nothing main event. He said that because they had all of those, that the AEW roster disrespected the main event because they had no rules in all the matches, as if the rest of the roster had anything to say about what was going on in every one of those matches. They didn't. Tony Khan's the one that booked that. Tony Khan let them do everything under the sun. So when the main event got out there, they had nothing to show that was new. They could do nothing different than they've already seen. So when they got there, yeah, it fell flat. That's not, Mr. Cornette, not the fault of the roster. It was the fault of Mr. Khan not knowing how to put together a show. I've been to shows like that. They do it. I went to a show one time. They had some kind of falls count anywhere in the first match, and by the time the main event got out there, the people were wore out for one thing, and then secondly, they'd already seen it all. They had already seen everything in the first match. In fact, it has a point about doing a bunch of stuff before the main event. Okay, he
Yeah.
absolutely has a point. But the fact of the matter is, it's not the roster or the wrestlers that's the one that's the issue. It's your person that's putting the show together that's the issue. We learned very quickly in wrestling business. The first chair shot, you're going to get a big explosion. You're going to get a big response. By the third and fourth one, it's already been done. So the best thing to do is to limit them. Same thing with choke slams and other pile drivers. You only do them once in a show. You don't just keep just doing it over and over and over again. Kind of like WWE and contract signings and running into the steps.
All right, let's see what people got
Yes.
to do. Robert Sutton, good old wrestling like it meant to be.
Yes.
1952 Georgia. A tremendous amount of talent. A lot of people might not know who Art Nelson is, and a lot of people might not know who Tarzan White is, but major stars in wrestling that when you get into the 60s, they are major stars in Georgia. Don McIntyre now has become a huge star in Atlanta, drawing a lot of money. You could tell main events. He's main eventing everywhere. He is the guy in Georgia at the time, and we'll start seeing as we move through Atlanta and we get to the 60s, and you see what's going on in the 60s. Paul Jones, very smart in that. And I do believe maybe at this time, Nick Carter could have been the booker at this time. Don McIntyre probably was helping as well. Paul Jones was probably putting his, but I think Nick Carter could have been the booker because he was booking many places during that time. All right, here we go. Boxing guy Brian said, "Hello, brothers West. Great to see you again. By the way, Stan Lane is not my dad either." That was all over the internet.
Yes.
Kevin Penley, I never thought Thesz was great until I saw him on video. Someone else that was pretty good was Paul Bosch. Lou was a wrestler. There was nothing fancy about Lou Thesz. Nothing he did inside the ring was fancy. But man, when he get in that ring, you knew number one, you were going to see a wrestling lesson. And I never got to see Paul Bosch. I would love to see Paul Bosch, but I've never seen any videos.
I have seen there is a match of him in Houston. This was probably, it wasn't in his prime though, but there is one, and I have to say, one of the better physiques in wrestling back then.
Oh, goodness gracious. Boxing guy Brian said, as historians, love of the business, what do you feel was the best time period for Georgia Championship Wrestling? I know your hearts are early to mid 80s, but what do you think was the true date? You know, honestly, the 1970s, I say, was the best time for Georgia Championship Wrestling. I've also been told that the 1960s was truly amazing in Georgia. So I'm gonna just say the 1960s and 1970s. I'm not gonna say I can't say the 1980s. That was when Georgia Championship Wrestling was going down pretty bad.
Yeah, once absolutely. You can put the date of when they started the Northern tours it went down. It went down. Now they're doing tremendous business in Ohio, West Virginia, Michigan, but Georgia is dead. I mean, it is dead by that time. But you're exactly right, because early 60s or late or middle 60s would have been when the Infernos were in Atlanta, and they were rocking it. With Bobby Shane, Mario Galento was there at the time. So yeah, they were doing big business.
Well, coming up on our next video that we do on Georgia, it's the first time to do television in 1954 on Channel 11. And we'll talk about that a little bit. And actually a little bit prior to that, see, they were being done the radio. They were talking over the matches on the radio, of the live matches. So, and we'll talk about all that. And because we talk about 1954 in the next one and the live TV wrestling. And they didn't. The one thing that I can tell you is the station really didn't care whether or not the wrestling show was on or not, because they moved it around everywhere for several years. But hey, business
stayed on. If I'm not mistaken, it stayed on Channel 11 for quite some time, though.
Yes, it did.
Bounced it around a lot.
Now that TV station, when it came on, was only on for 3 years prior to wrestling being on there. So maybe just didn't understand what they had. Ethel Johnson was a pioneer in black women's wrestling. Yes, no doubt. Tarzan White, Kevin Penley said Tarzan White played at Alabama. Did not know that. Let's see, what did he say? He said, "This is why I haven't sent any hard support your way other than getting friends to subscribe." I don't even know what that means. I love the Joe Palooka films. Not great cinema.
Palooka.
Palooka. I've never seen them. I'd have to go back and look at them. It was very interesting. That story was very interesting and very sad. Let's see. Rick Brooks. I can remember my dad speaking of Ike many years ago from Rick Brooks. He must have been tremendous. But man, to die the way he did was just brutal. I mean, that's just horrible.
It's awful.
If Babe was female, no, Babe Harris was not a female. The Muscles was a female. No, Babe Harris was not. But there was a Babe Harris, and it was a female. She was a female athlete. But this is not the same one. And during the when I put the photographs in there, I'll put a photograph of Babe and his wife. His wife was actually a wrestler as well. And I will put that on there so you can see them. But yeah, Muscles. I don't know who Muscles was, so I couldn't even tell you who the Black Monsters was. I couldn't find anything on them. Mickey Mayfield. My dad used to talk about a wrestler back in the day called Baby Huey. Anyone know anything about him?
He is coming up on our list, if I'm not mistaken, Brent.
Oh, is he coming up on it?
I believe he's on the list for coming up. Yeah.
All right, there you go. So if you get that stomach flu, you don't want it. Mickey went by Teenage Huey, and now does spot shows under Old Fart.
Wait a minute. That's old Mako. That's who this is.
Mako, yes.
It's old Mako. Yeah. I know who he is now.
Yes. Michael Barr. Hello, all.
It's all coming.
Should promotions book 6 months in advance or a year and plan for injuries in that span? You know what? Here's my take on that, Roddy. See what you think as far as booking. And we're talking about booking, not really booking arenas, but I think he's talking about booking wrestlers. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. When Hulk Hogan was the WWF heavyweight champion, they would say, okay, here's the match. Don't do anything crazy during this match, but let's do this, and this, and this, and the people will be happy. But don't do too much, because we can't get you hurt, because a month from now you're at WrestleMania, so you can't get hurt for that. And they made sure the guys didn't get hurt. I don't understand. If you'll notice, Roman Reigns don't do anything stupid to get himself hurt. He don't do stupid moves. He might get hurt, but it's going to be an accident. Why reason he got hurt? It's not because he did something stupid.
He's not doing any dives out of the ring.
No,
No, he's not doing any stupid stuff like that.
so I think you can book it if your bookers understand the wrestling business and understand do not do this, and this that you did on TV here tonight. Don't do it.
Yeah. And another thing that they did, and we'll just, I mean, I'm just full disclosure. A lot of the wrestlers worked hurt.
Yes, they did.
And they just, and it's because if you're out for any longer time, you lose your spot.
Yeah.
You lose your spot. So you might be right in the middle of something right now. If they have to replace you, you may not be back for another, after you're back, it may be months before you're able to be pushed back in the top position again. So the best thing to do is lots of times, like I said, lots of times they'll work sick to keep their spot.
But they make a big deal out of someone getting hurt when all you do is just push somebody into that spot. So all you have to do is just push them.
And they would work around an injury.
Yeah,
they would work around an injury. I know Dick Slater he had hurt his back, and he was still wrestling. And why in the world he was against Bob Armstrong in Columbus, Georgia, and Bob was giving those big punches, and Slater was going up and over the top rope. And we're thinking, well, if he's hurt, we can't tell it. But yeah, they worked hurt lots of times for sure.
Well, because they had to. They didn't get paid.
Well, and can you imagine at that time, Slater was a Georgia champion, and to have him hurt, the show had to go on, and he was a trooper. He went out there and got it done. And they would work around. They would work around the injuries.
Yes, they would.
They would work around the injuries.
Not getting away from wrestling, most performances by musicians have to be booked from a year to 6 months ahead of time. Wrestling the same, and it should be.
Sure.
I don't know why.
Yeah,